All right, guys, welcome back to the One for the Road podcast. Tonight, we are going to be covering SpaceX, which is, there's a lot of hype behind it. I'm sure if any of you are at all watching any type of mainstream media, you've heard that SpaceX just recently had its IPO. It has the largest valuation in history. It's a really big deal for the markets. Nothing like this has ever happened. And, of course, everybody is throwing their theories out there as to what this could be, whether you should buy now or wait 6 months. I know a lot of people that got in early. There's, from my understanding, there's a lot of stipulations between getting in on this IPO on different platforms. They can't sell for 6 months. It's practically locked up. I definitely did not buy at the IPO. I'm waiting 6 months to get in. But some people went ahead and jumped in. I know a really cool part about it is that there are people that have been working for SpaceX for a while that weren't in executive positions by any means, and they are now millionaires because they were allowed to get in on the stock early because they were employees. 4,000 new millionaires were created that worked for SpaceX, which is really cool. From my understanding, there was a welder, a guy that welded for SpaceX, and now he's a millionaire, and he's been making the rounds and talking on some podcasts and on some media outlets. So there's a lot of really cool things going on with this. Some people, of course, are going to say it's overvalued, considering its earnings. But if history tells us one thing, is not to bet against Musk. Musk is an extraordinary person. He's the world's first trillionaire, which is nothing short of a great accomplishment, I guess you could say. It's absolutely unreal. It's almost impossible to wrap your head around how much money that is. But he's a super smart guy, and he's been at it for a long time, been through some ups and downs, and he just hasn't quit, and that's how he's gotten to where he is. So with that being said, I want to start with Elon's origin story. So he was born in South Africa in 1971, and from what I have seen in my research, he was wealthy growing up, but it was not a good childhood. His dad was apparently a very rough character and was really hard on Elon. So he didn't have it easy. If you go out there and you look up some of the interviews with his dad, and you just watch his dad talk, you can tell that the dude's pretty twisted, in my opinion. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. There is plenty of accusations to back me up on thinking that there's something a little off with this guy. But from my understanding, he's never been proven guilty, I guess you could say, on any of the accusations. So, you could just take your word for it. But I know Elon and his brother and some of his other siblings act like he was a really rough character, really hard on Elon. But besides all that, he grew up reading. He escaped into sci-fi and engineering books and computer manuals. At age 10, he teaches himself programming. At 12, he sells a video game for a few $100, and that's the first spark. So he started out extremely young. At 10 to teach yourself how to program, if that doesn't just tell you this kid was set up for success, I don't know what does. But apparently he was bullied really bad, even to the point to where he was hospitalized. And of course, like I've already mentioned, his home life was really complicated. So I guess his success and his strive to be successful was probably driven by a lot of that. Let's see here. So he moved to Canada when he was 17, and then he goes to the University of Pennsylvania. He studied physics and economics, not necessarily because he wanted a job, but he just wanted to understand how the world worked. When the internet boom hit in the mid-90s, that's when he jumped in head first. So a few of his first companies here were Zip2, X.com, and PayPal, which most of you probably listening are only familiar with PayPal. I know I was. These weren't glamorous companies. They were startups. He slept in the office. Apparently he showered at the YMCA, and he just coded all night long. Zip2 sold for over $300 million, and PayPal sells for $1.5 billion, and Musk walks away with enough money to retire. And for most people, when you now I want to be clear, he had partners in these companies, so he did not walk away with $1.5 billion. It was split up between him and a few other guys, but he still had plenty of money to retire after that. But instead of that, he wants to go bigger. So he starts thinking into humanity's future, things like energy, transportation, and of course space, which is what SpaceX is all about. And so that's where things kind of really began. I got some stuff here. The birth of SpaceX. So it started in 2001, and this is when he starts to become obsessed with Mars. And not even the idea of just visiting Mars, but he wants to settle in Mars. He wants to have a civilization on Mars. He tried to buy rockets from Russia, and they laughed at him. So he just decided to build his own. In 2002, in a warehouse he started in El Segundo, California. He had a small team, a crazy mission, but he was willing to risk everything, which is the coolest part about the whole story. Apparently, the money that he got from those companies selling, he just invested all of that between SpaceX and Tesla. So he apparently didn't put anything to the side whatsoever for a rainy day. He just went all in. And that is would not be common amongst hardly anybody, to be that driven to where you're willing to risk, millions and millions of dollars, to make something happen. A normal person would take, at least 10, 15, maybe even 20 million into that, lock it in some safe investments and let it ride and take the other part and, then go for a startup. But not this guy. This guy just, he went all in with all the money that he had in on these companies. But it was not an easy road. So he had Falcon 1, which was the first rocket, and 3 launches failed. And the company was on the brink of bankruptcy, and he was almost out of money. Tesla apparently at this point was struggling. Everything is collapsing. So then, September 28, 2008, Falcon 1 reached orbit, and that one success pretty much saves the company. So he had 3 fails, and then on the 4th try, it worked, and it saved him. If it didn't work on the 4th try, he was done. The company was going under, and there was no coming back from that. So then so as things start to turn up, NASA steps in, and he gets a $1.6 billion contract. And SpaceX goes from a startup to becoming a serious contender. So when NASA gave the $1 billion contract, that's when things were like, okay, this is we're moving on from startup mode, and we're actually on to something here. So then SpaceX builds Falcon 9, they build Dragon, and they start delivering cargo to the ISS. But the real breakthrough is the reusability. So for decades, rockets were thrown away after one use. And so Elon had the idea, why not land them and reuse them? And that's the big catch here. Imagine how much it costs to build a rocket, and then, after you use it, you have to throw it away, and then you have to build a new one. So the key here is being able to reuse the rockets. And so a lot of people laughed at him. The experts say it's impossible. And then in 2015, SpaceX lands a booster for the first time. In 2017, then they refly one, and that completely changed the game. The launch costs drop, launch cadence skyrockets, competitors panicked, and the government started to take notice, like, hey, this guy's he's building rockets and he is reusing them, which is something that was unheard of and never thought to be possible. So by 2026, Falcon 9 is launching 3 times a week. Boosters have landed and reflown nearly 650 times. SpaceX becomes the dominant launch provider on Earth. So then segment 5 here, we've got Starlink, the money engine. In 2019, SpaceX launches the first big batch of Starlink satellites. This becomes the backbone of the company. Starlink grows into the largest satellite constellation in history, over 6,000 satellites in orbit. It provides internet to rural communities, airlines, militaries, and entire countries during wartime. It becomes the revenue engine that funds everything else, including the biggest rocket ever built. Starlink is quite the giant behind SpaceX's rise. So that gives you a little insight into the company here. Starlink is the driver. You know, he can provide internet in communities that didn't have nobody else has the capability of providing internet in these deep rural communities. And don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that he supplied internet to Ukraine during the the Russian and Ukraine war is still going on, if you want to call it a war. But he did that, and Starlink is what is kind of like, I guess you could say, the cash cow here. It's what is funding SpaceX. It's what's keeping it going. So then there's Starship, the giant rocket. Starship is a different kind of beast. So it's the largest, most powerful rocket ever flown. It's designed for the moon, Mars, and deep space. But it's been pretty rough, getting this thing going. There's been explosions, failures, static fire anomalies, FFA investigation, booster catches, booster misses, ships lost during re-entry. But each test is getting him closer, and each flight goes higher. Each iteration gets better. So Starship is the long game. It's the generational bet. If it works, guys, it will change everything. I mean, it's going to change space travel, cargo transport, lunar missions, Mars missions, even Earth-to-Earth travel. This is the rocket that could really, redefine our civilization. It's honestly, it's unbelievable to wrap your head around. I mean, with this thing, space travel could potentially no longer be, a few people being able to get into a rocket and everybody's watching, and once in a lifetime thing, these people get to do it. He's wanting to make this a more regular occurrence, the same way as you call an Uber to go out on a Friday night. He's wanting to be able to just get in a rocket and go to space. So then we have XAI, TerraFab, and the AI pivot. So in 2006, Musk made a massive move. SpaceX acquires XAI in a deal valuing the combined company at $1.25 trillion, the largest acquisition in history. So the plan behind this is space-based AI centers, AI compute in orbit, massive semiconductor fabs on Earth, a global compute network that powered by rockets, satellites, and next-gen chips. So this is where space and AI collide. So this is what makes it just extraordinary, unique to have data centers in space. And again, if you guys have at all been tuned into any kind of mainstream news, there's a lot of controversy around data centers. I don't have any solid proof of this, but apparently data centers can really affect a water supply. So, Google, Microsoft, or whoever comes in to a rural area, small town, and they put a data center, and apparently it is really detrimental to the water supply. But if Musk pulls this off, then that worry is completely gone, because he wants the data centers to be in space. So we'll get into a little bit about the IPO. It happened this month, June of 2026. It went public. The valuation was $1.77 trillion, and like I mentioned before, this is the largest IPO ever. Musk controls 85% of the voting power, meaning he can't be fired. And if you look at the statistics of companies who are founder-led versus the ones who are not founder-led, the companies that are led by the founder, which him having 85% control here, always seem to do better because they have the drive, they have the initiative. This is, their baby, their company. They want to make this work. It's not just, a CEO that was hired that, if it doesn't work out, the CEO, he's just going to go work somewhere else. Musk has 85% control here, and he wants this to work. This is his life's mission, and he's going to do whatever he can to make this work. So for investors, that can give you, some ease and when you're, making your decision. One thing that I do is before I invest in a company, I'll always look at who the CEO is. NVIDIA has Jensen Huang. IonQ had a great CEO, in my opinion. Jensen Huang is my favorite right now just because of his origin story. It's really important to me personally who the CEO is, and knowing that Musk is the CEO gives me a lot of faith in the company. Some people just like to look at earnings and that's it. For me, a good CEO will make me look past anything else. If I watch a CEO and, I can tell that he's confident in what he's saying, he's rest assured, you can tell a lot by how somebody talks about how they really feel about their company. And so to me, this is really a good thing that he controls 85%. So we'll get into a little bit of the controversy. So the other side of this is Musk is polarizing. He's praised as a visionary. But he's criticized for misinformation, political statements, and platform decisions. He's been involved in lawsuits, workplace investigations, public feuds. Some of you remember when he took over Twitter, named it X, laid a bunch of people off. They want to say the spike in hate speech went up, but who cares? If you believe in hate speech, then this podcast isn't for you. So he served briefly as senior advisor to President Trump in 2025. Of course, they had that falling out. He was in charge of Doge, and I don't really know all the details behind why they fell out, but you can imagine two guys like that trying to work together is never going to work. So he's loved, he's hated. But regardless of your opinion, his impact is undeniable. Nobody can say that Elon Musk has not had a extraordinary impact on our world. I mean, and if he pulls this off with SpaceX, if his vision comes true, it's going to be unlike anything anybody's ever done. So, if you want to, back up here and just look at Elon's empire. So, of course, we've got SpaceX. We've talked about it. It's rocket, satellite, starships. Tesla, EVs, battery, energy storage. Tesla hasn't necessarily, been really doing all that great. There's a lot of, debate over, the Teslas. Some people love them. Some people hate them. I don't own a Tesla, but I think they're cool. The Tesla trucks are pretty sharp if you ask me, but there are a lot of people out there that don't care much for them. Then you got XAI, which has got Grok and Grokopedia, Neuralink, the Boring Company. And speaking of the Boring Company, if you're a Nashville native, from my understanding, he was going to try to do something in Nashville, but of course the city council or whoever in Davidson County shut it down, which is ridiculous. You got X Corp, which is social media payments, TerraFab, which is semiconductor manufacturing, which in our current time in history, you can't really go wrong there. So this is his whole network. It's a machine, it's a $1 trillion system, and this one guy, Musk, sits at the center of it, for better or for worse. Some people, of course, are going to think, well, somebody with $1 trillion, it's too much power, this, that, or the other, and, maybe not. Nobody can really say for sure. But Elon Musk is a complicated guy. He's definitely brilliant. He's relentless. He's chaotic, controversial, but he's a visionary, and, he's all of this at the same time. But the story isn't about perfection. It's all about his ambition. He refuses to quit, and he obviously refuses to think small. So he was, just a kid from South Africa, and now he's the world's first trillionaire. He's launching rockets weekly, and he's building AI in orbit, which is just absolutely unbelievable. So it's just really insane for this one guy to be pulling this off in modern history, and it's unfolding now, and he's just getting started. I mean, SpaceX just went public. I find this truly interesting. What this could, nobody can say for sure of what a company is going to do, but if they do what they say they're going to do, this is seriously going to be unlike anything that we've ever seen. So we'll see. If you choose to invest, maybe you will, maybe you won't. Not financial advice by any means whatsoever, but I'm not jumping in until another 6 months, and I'll honestly probably just treat it as a savings. As some people would have a savings account, my savings account is going to be SpaceX, and I'm just going to dollar cost average for a pretty good while, because if this does take off, it's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen. But that's all I got tonight, guys. If you enjoyed, give me a like, leave a comment, tell me what you think. And thanks for listening.